but it's great. It's great to see people. So hi, I'm Steve Barnes, and I guess the subject here is martial arts. It would be reasonable to give a little bit about my background. I've spent almost half a century practicing various martial arts with, multiple belts and this, that, and the other. I can go into that as much as you want if you would like me to. And I've taught Tai Chi for almost 40 years and studied Indonesian Picjak Salat and Filipino Kali and Judo and Jiu-Jitsu and a couple different forms of karate. And it's just something I got into and have loved all my life. So what I would like to do is ask me a question. And there'd be no such thing as an offensive question. There might be a question I don't want to answer, but you wouldn't have been offensive for asking it. So, please, unmute yourself. Owner Gales Dance, why don't you unmute yourself and talk to me a little bit? What can I do for you? Nope, you're not unmuting yourself? Oh, okay. Well, you could try chat. And if you're going over to chat, you could ask me anything that you want in chat, and I'll be delighted to address it. There are only three things in my life that I really care about: writing, martial arts, and my family. So I've been able to cross-breed the writing and the martial arts quite a bit, although I don't get to do straight out martial arts stuff in my writing as often as once I did, for various and sundry reasons. But I still really, really, really enjoy it. It's just great fun. So, any questions? You guys are martial artists? Okay, let's try. Let me try. So, Chris. Hello, Chris.
Hi.
Hi. So, what brings you here today? What can I do for you?
Well, I was curious to hear about your experiences. I've studied a little martial arts. I've that had some fencing and some SCA, but I also had a good instructor for Jeet Kune Do, which was a lot of fun. So I was curious, how has because one thing I learned in learning martial arts is that just because you know how to do something doesn't mean you want to go into a dangerous situation that you know is dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, there are certainly people who deliberately place themselves in such contexts: police officers, soldiers, paramedics, people as firemen, people who run toward the fire or toward the explosion, except away from. There is a percentage of human beings that have that psychology, and thank goodness. We would be a lot less safe if they did not exist. But for most people, learning to fight or learning fighting techniques, those are not the same things. Keanu Reeves is arguably a martial artist at this point. Is he a fighter? That's a completely separate question. It should not increase your urge to get into trouble, just to test yourself. I think that in general, martial artists as a group are more violent than non-martial artists, but they're less violent than they would have been had they not studied the martial arts. There is an attraction to learning how to do this thing that implies a psychological feeling that learning how to do this thing is valuable. Why else would they spend their time doing it? So Jeet Kune Do is interesting stuff. I never studied Jeet Kune Do formally, but I studied for 3 years with Danny Inosanto, who's Bruce's, lead student. He was not teaching Jeet Kune Do. He would teach Junfan kickboxing concepts. He promised Bruce that he would not teach Jeet Kune Do. And Jeet Kune Do was really interesting because it was a deconstruction of Asian martial arts using sports psychology and sports physiology dynamics and terminology as opposed to traditional stuff. So he was looking at the way you generate power and break timing and the distances. And he took things from fencing and wrestling and boxing and anywhere else he could find it. So in that sense, he was an extremely original thinker. I mean, really original, serious breakthrough level. And he was also an Olympic quality athlete. That's a good combination. So that's cool. It's cool. Yeah, well, thanks for coming, and we will try to circle back around and see if there's anything that we can discuss that will be of greater use. What about you, John? John, there you are.
I wanted to ask you in that hold on. Okay, here's my microphone. I'm talking to you from the Philippines. I'm an
Oh,
American.
wonderful. Yeah,
An
I was hoping to
American.
be in the Philippines last year, and I was hoping to be there in March of next year. It doesn't look like it's going to happen because of COVID.
Yeah, yeah. The Delta variant is kind of hitting us hard.
Yeah, it's scary. Stay safe. So what is it you'd wanted
Thank
to
you.
ask me?
Uh, well, I find the Philippines an interesting place in that I feel very safe here, but I hear stories about how it's very safe until it's not, and then it kind of rips your head off. And there's a rather creepy story that I was told by the aunt of my fiance that supposedly around 25 years ago, there was a former member of the British SAS who came to this area to court a local lovely woman. And, he's a big muscular guy who thought, I can take care of anybody who messes with me. And what he encountered was a gang, a group of thugs that have a long history here in the Philippines. And supposedly they're sort of a dying breed, and the police really tried to hunt them down. But they work in groups, and they're expert knife fighters. And that's to me the creepy thing. Evil martial artists, but they are really good knife fighters. They know where to strike you. They know how to fight in a coordinated way. And they, on a isolated jungle pathway, they confronted this guy, and they're even kind of adept at acting. And so they basically closed in on him, and he thought, oh, these people don't even know each other, and there's no danger, and all of a sudden they just pounced on him. And he was a big, powerful guy who knew how to fight. But and supposedly he even killed a couple of them, basically with his bare hands. But by the time they finally decided to turn and run, he had been mortally wounded, and he was found dead that morning, a few hundred feet from the front door of his beloved. And so my fiance's aunt basically told me this story to let me know, hey, you're no tough guy compared to that SAS commando. And if he could be taken down by some of the locals, you sure could.
Sure.
But that story really chilled my blood. And I have very limited martial arts training, like 2 years in Taekwondo. So ever since then, I kind of walk around with my eyes very open, like, who can I trust?
Well, a couple of different things. First of all, that story includes some mind reading where he thought, well, these people are this, these people are that. But since he was found dead, nobody knows what he was thinking. So
Right,
be careful.
right.
Be careful about believing the provenance of that story. But the fact is that a group of people with knives, Jesus, that's a few things I can imagine that would be more dangerous. One person with a knife. Knives are horrifically dangerous weapons. I mean, they terrify me. They're the reason why human beings were able to succeed against jungle cats, and things larger, because knives concentrate force. Be careful about that. But, assuming that you are staying out of the jungle at night, you should be okay. Did you have a specific question, or was it just you're feeling discomfort about that issue and wanted to express yourself?
Well, my understanding was this panel was not just about martial arts, but self-defense.
Sure.
And so I
well,
was
the most important thing, self-defense.
Even basic self-defense tips, and I realize a lot of that is common sense.
Oh, well, no, I mean, the most basic self-defense tip would be use a tool. As soon as you said he took several of them empty-handed, it doesn't sound to me like he was an SAS guy. Where was his knife? Those guys carry weapons. See what I'm saying? So the story is suspect. However, the most important thing is if you're in a situation, do everything you can to de-escalate verbally. Everything you can. Run away if you possibly can. If you can't, one of my instructors would say, you're a primate. Use a tool. I mean, seriously, you pick up something and hit them with it. You use barrier technology. You get something between you and the weapon, for God's sake. You don't, it's like, no, there are no neat techniques that you're going to learn against a knife. It's, two guys with knives. One of them goes to the hospital, the other one goes to the morgue. It's knives are very serious. So, mostly be careful. Stay out of situations like that, and always be on condition orange or red if you're in a strange area without any backup. Just make that assumption. Courtesy. Common sense will go a lot further than a black belt in terms of dealing with knives and things like that. Don't give the person any motivation to want to hurt you. That's one of the first things I'll do. I'll give that person no motivation to want to hurt me. I'm polite to them. I'm kind to them. If they want my wallet, they can have the money in my wallet. It's just money. Not just a matter that it's not worth almost dying for. It's not worth hurting somebody for. I don't enjoy that thought. I have no, anyway, so that's the most important thing I could think of. But the other thing I think of, as long as you're in the Philippines, why not study some Filipino martial arts? They have some great stuff. They may be the best knife fighters in the world. That is, and the stick fighting. And the beautiful thing about Filipino martial arts is that those techniques don't just work for sticks and knives, but they work for both sticks and knives, and they also work for empty hands. They're doing something that is really interesting and extremely sophisticated in that sense, and I think it's worth checking out. It's fun. Okay. All right. So, Owner Gale's Dance. Who is Owner Gale's Dance? That can't be your name.
Yeah, this Jim Glass here. I'm on my wife's computer, so it comes out as Owner Gale's Dance. I've experienced a couple of your Tai Chi classes that you give at cons.
Great.
And I'm getting up there in years. My first question is Tai Chi a slowed down version of a martial art, or is it a variation of a martial art?
It's a variation, and it's also slowed down. I mean, what you see in the Tai Chi form is like slowing down a complex dance move, so that you can learn to understand where your balance is and where your movement is, every inch of that movement. Tai Chi had the reputation and has the reputation of being the most advanced of the Chinese martial arts, but the way it's taught in most places does not express that at all. Unless the person, use your common sense there. To turn Tai Chi, to return the martial aspect of Tai Chi, you'd have to do a lot of different things. And one of them is to understand the ways that the combative theories operate. Combative theories of Tai Chi operate. I have a suspicion, based on reading between the lines, that the power of Tai Chi, the real power of Tai Chi, is learning how to trigger voluntary tachypsychia, the psychological time distortion. I have a number of reasons for thinking that could be the case. If that is true, that's astounding. It is.
The second part of my question was, do they ever teach a somewhat sped up version of Tai Chi so you can just move a little faster?
Well, yeah, you can speed it up if you want to, but that's not the same as fighting.
Right, but I mean,
be very aware that speeding up the form is not learning how to fight with it. So yeah, sure, absolutely, you can speed the form up.
Yeah, I guess I'm thinking of it more in a form of exercise.
Sure. Yeah, and Tai Chi can be really excellent exercise. I like a lot of things about it. It's the Qigong exercises, the Chinese Qigong exercises are the health and energy aspect of Tai Chi. There is joint mobility work that does a lot of what Tai Chi does, and there is yoga, which I think is, if you can find a good teacher, and I'd say a good teacher would be like a woman in her 60s, somebody who's still fit and healthy, but also is familiar that people are human and need to be brought along slowly. you could get a lot of those benefits out of it. But in terms of if you are pulled toward it psychologically, if you like it, if there's a part of you that feels this is beautiful and I would like that, then do it. Absolutely. It's one of the most.
My yoga teacher is a woman. She's 72, and her classes just about kill me. So I mean,
no, you see, here's the whole thing. The thing with yoga. Never go deeper into a pose than you can go and still breathe smoothly. Mm-hmm. If you find yourself holding your breath or your breathing getting choppy, you're doing it wrong. It is better to do let's say build a 15-minute routine that you do at home, staying within your breathing and moving right to the edge where your breathing is challenged, but stay there. If you do that, your body will start opening up and you'll get more of your the potential strength and power and so forth and so on. But you shouldn't leave a yoga class feeling trashed. If you do that, you're not paying attention to what your body is telling you.
Okay. I have two sons that are in the Taekwondo. My oldest one is a second-degree black belt in Taekwondo, and he taught it for some years. But now he's starting to push 60. That's how old I am. So, he's still doing it. So, but I just don't have the stamina at my age to, get into the
Taekwondo. Martial arts are not ideal for either fitness or health. Their primary, although they have benefits there, the primary reason for martial art is to learn how to fight. I mean, that's what it is. And, so people sacrifice their hip joints in order to be able to throw a really good yapchugi side kick, and it's a good trade-off if that kick kept you alive when you were 20. You were in a fight, 3 guys, and you took out a couple of. So when you're 40, you need a hip replacement. Okay, but you're alive. So at your age, you want to focus on health. So I would say that the joint mobility drills. I'm going to type something in here, and I want you to go to YouTube. I want you to go to YouTube and look up that search term. There's a guy named Scott Sonnen who has a series of joint mobility drills that are a whole course that's free on YouTube. And if you will use that, you'll change your life. And I'm talking about every day. Between 5 and 10 minutes every day to get your mobility back is a damned fine investment. Okay? You got it. You got it. So let's see. We have 13 people who are lurking, but they're not showing themselves. So what I want to do is to just be able to talk about anything, just that you'd like to go into. This is one of the areas that I actually have some. Oh, Stellar Miller. Hi, how are you? Why don't you unmute yourself and say hi, and let me see what I can do for you.
Oh, I'm just here to listen in.
Oh, okay. What is your interest in martial arts?
I used to study Wadokai karate.
Wudokai?
Wado Ryu.
Wado Ryu. Okay, yeah, that I've heard of. Wado Ryu. That'd be an Okinawan style.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's been a very long time.
Yeah. But did you had fun taking it?
Yeah.
How long did you take it? How long did you study?
I guess we did maybe a little bit more than a year.
Okay.
Okay. The teacher started going in a strange direction. It started getting less what we signed up for. Did
it start becoming culty?
Some people we talked to later said so.
Yeah, it happens.
He got more into the whole competitive thing, and we got into it for the Wado portion of the.
Which is what, more the self-defense aspect, the mental integration aspect.
More mental. It literally translates to the way of peace and harmony.
Okay.
And I don't know, harsh training for competitions just seemed to not be what we were after.
I understand completely. I was willing to compete, and I was good at it when I did, but it was never closest to my heart.
Yeah.
What was closest to my heart is answering, there are 2 questions core questions in the arts and in philosophy. Who am I? And what is true? And I have found the martial arts to be beautiful ways of investigating, interrogating the question of, who am I? My emotions, my mind, my body, how do these things fit together? What happens when they don't? What is the value of integrity in my life, of honesty, of compassion, of fierceness? What, is there any part of me that it would not be willing to fight for my existence? And why? What, to look at things like that are things that I have really, really appreciated, from the arts. And, young people who want to, bang bodies and have fun and, and hit each other in the face, good on them. Have fun. It can be great fun to do that. But that's not the thing that I love about the arts. It's, if there are three major archetypes, then I have the sort of the householder, the husband and parent, the griot, and the warrior. And the question is, if those are three aspects of who I am, what is sitting at the middle of the triangle?
Mm-hmm.
Who am I? And I'm glad that you had that experience. And if they were taking you in a direction you didn't want to go in, then you were smart to walk away.
Yeah, like I said, we did talk to some people later, and it's probably good we got out when we did.
Gotcha. You have any questions about anything that I can answer for you while I'm here?
No.
Anything you'd like me to talk about? So I can go off in all kind of different directions, but this is your time, and I would like very much to be able to express things that will be of value to the people who come to this convention. And during the time that I'm here, that would be the thing that would make me happiest, is the feeling that I'm being of some use to people.
So Stephen, one of the other authors I know that's into martial arts is Joe R. Lansdale. Have you ever traded notes with him?
No, I've never met him. We've passed each other. I attended a mass signing where I think he'd just been there before I was there. Joe Lansdale, I believe his father was a bare knuckle boxer, and that he himself is an advanced practitioner of Kempo Karate. I've seen some video on him, and he's very quick. But I've never spoken with him.
Maybe at a future convention they'll put you both on a panel to talk about your respective experiences.
That would certainly be delightful. I have no problem. I would have, I would enjoy that. I've enjoyed being on panels with people who have advanced arts, advanced practice, as well as people who are beginners, and are just interested in it, writing fight scenes or appreciating fight scenes in movies, or just, self-defense or the arts as art. There's so many different ways you could apply it. I could look at the martial arts from cultural point of physics and physiology and psychology and anthropology. And there's so many different ways I could enter that matrix, because this is just something I've done for a very long time. So it's just endlessly fascinating to me. I don't know, Lansdale hasn't written much about martial arts that I've been able to see. I believe he contributed a story to an anthology that Roger Zelazny did a long time ago, Warriors of Blood and Dream or something like that. I think Joe Lansdale did a story for that. But that's interesting. There are martial artists who rarely talk about it in their work, and then there's some who talk about it a lot, and there are people who are non-martial artists who have martial arts in every book, so there's lots of different approaches, lots of different ways to go at it. Interesting. But no, I've never met the gentleman.
There's a lot of violence in a lot of Joe's books, especially the Hap and Leonard books, but there's not a lot of martial arts. It's more brawling. It's just, you get in, you get the job done, and you're out.
Yeah, well, that's what I would call martial science. The science of focusing violence, focusing intent, targeting physiology, taking apart the other person's psychology, that kind of stuff. Art implies a philosophical core, something other than I want to survive this. Art is taking the martial science and connecting it to that sense of who am I? The same thing that I would do in writing a book or story is try to be expressing my being in it. So there are differences there, and it's kind of interesting noting the difference between a martial art and a martial science. And not everybody uses that kind of terminology, but I like that.
I think there's a question here about your writing and martial arts. I mean, Joe, his scenes are very quick. They go in, punch, punch, do the move, and maybe there's a counter, but that's about it.
Right.
That fight is over. I read a lot of sort of kung fu novels in the 70s and 80s by people like, the Mace books by Li Chang, and they were all kick your ass books. It's over the top action stuff. But your books, your fight scenes are sort of in between. They're not necessarily over in 10 seconds, but you don't go way over the top. They're very realistic, but you get that beauty of the fight as well. How do you approach that?
Well, one of the things that I would do is ask what the intent is. If I want to be super realistic, then it's going to be over really fast, if possible. And it's not going to be beautiful. It's not going to be formalized. But I enjoy what I call 2.5 dimensional stories. Some of them, I've written several novels that are what I call 2.5 dimensional. They're worlds that resemble our world quite a bit, but aren't exactly our world. Physics and physiology work just a little different. Sometimes psychology works just a little different, and I will manipulate the events so that large world-spanning events can be resolved with a physical conflict. I mean, it's a deliberate manipulation because I figure that the audience is along for the ride. They want that. They want the story. They want the hero to slay the dragon, as it were. So the question is always, what is it? What is my intent? How do I want people to feel when they close the book or walk away from that particular scene? And what do they need to have those emotions? So a good fight scene is going to express the being of the character, that by the time that fight scene is over, that character a little better than you did before it started. The same thing should be true of a conversation. The same thing should be true of almost any scene. The same thing shouldn't be true of love scenes. What is the information I'm getting here? What do I know about these people that I can't communicate through anything other than an explosion of violence? Given those things, then I might ask, put together basic choreography, and then ask myself, what does this look like from 3 different positions? From the position of my lead character, the position of the antagonist, and a neutral observer, because I might need to shift between those depending on the emotional dance. In other words, do I want people to think, oh, that hurt? Or do I want them to think, wow, that was clever? Or, my goodness, that was beautiful? What is the response that I want? And every fight within a story should be different in that sense, because it's a type of scene. And cumulatively, the scenes within a story are like phrases of music or dance, where when the audience walks out of the theater, you want them feeling a particular thing. But in order for them to feel that, they had to have had several preliminary experiences. I want them to feel this here, and then I want them to feel this here, and then I want them to feel this here. In a sequence, flowing. You listen to a good piece of music, it will have different phrases, different states, different segments that generate and pay off emotion that then work together to create building to a crescendo, leading to an epiphany. So a fight scene, if you want to watch somebody who really, really knows how to choreograph fight scene, take a look at the boxing sequences in Rocky. Sylvester Stallone really understands that each one of those boxing sequences is a mini drama. They're little soap operas. And he choreographs the emotions and the physicality beautifully. Jackie Chan, in a Jackie Chan scene, look at the way he is expressing his cleverness, his personality, his morality. Jackie Chan very rarely kills people in his movies. It's almost all fighting for fun, you know, in a way. I mean, even when it's really serious and people are trying to kill him, he's joking around. And that is a character that he has created that enabled him to escape the comparison to Bruce Lee. You know, the Jackie Chan movie is different in that particular sense. It's not raw anger. It's other stuff. So who are you? Who is the character? What is the situation? What are you trying to convey? All of those things fit together. And so hopefully every fight scene I've ever written is a little different, and that they're all little mini dramas that are expressing different things about different people at different times in their lives. Does that make sense?
Oh, it makes a lot of sense. There's a scene in the Kundalini Equation in a Filipino restaurant.
Yes.
And it's, as much as there's all these amazing moves going on, and that's a scene that takes a while for a good reason, but it's really all about their minds. You know, it's what's going on in their heads.
Yeah, and it's also a demonstration that Adam Ludlum, the lead character in there, it's saying something about how he has changed, because what happens is that Oye, the owner of the restaurant, is a master of Filipino martial arts, which Adam has never seen. He's never practiced it. But by the end of their time working together, just in a few minutes, he excels the master. He picks up on it. He learns it. And he excels it. So it definitely says something about Oye's ego, that he's crushed by it and terrified by it. It says something about Adam, and that he's learning things about himself that he didn't know. And it's also saying something about the situation that he's in, that this thing that he has triggered within himself is its own beast. And that although at that moment what happens is positive, it sets it up for things to get negative. The film, the Kundalini Equation, is a book that I wrote. It's not a film. Dear Stephanie Dyer asked that. I would love, you know, and there's a sequel to that book called 12 Days, spiritual sequel to Kundalini Equation, in which I was once again able to play some of those games, to do that sort of two and a half dimensionality in some ways, because some of the interactions are ranging into the world of the mystical. The new Marvel movie, Shang-Chi, does this at a master level. They understand what they're doing very, very well. So the fights range from fairly real. Most of them are still kind of playful. There's no, like, you know, neck breaking. The first fight is on a bus where you are revealing the character. And it's like, oh my God, he can do that. But then there's another sequence that is very Jackie Chan. It's very, very looking at the way Jackie Chan did things. There's absolutely no doubt that they studied his movies to get that. But then they go from there into Shaw Brothers stuff, and, you know, sword operas and stuff like that, and ultimately into, you know, in a mystical Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon with real hidden dragons. It's, and each sequence has its own rhythm. The sequence with Michelle Yeoh, there's a sequence with Michelle Yeoh that is just so wonderful. I mean, she is definitely a goddess, and just nothing but love and respect for her. But, you know, it's so much fun that there's so many different ways to look at this stuff, as opposed to just fight scenes, you know, just, you know, whether or not it's James Bond and Red Grant in From Russia with Love, and that train sequence. That ain't martial arts. That's two big, strong, tough, powerful, well-trained men trying to kill each other. That's great. That's a great scene. Or the scene between William Smith and Rod Taylor in Darker Than Amber. You can look it up on YouTube, just the fight scene between the two of them, because it was real. I mean, they whether it was totally by mutual agreement or what, the choreography went out the window, and the master shot of the two of them was real. They were really going at it. My guess is that once they had that master shot, they cooled everybody down and then did their pickup shots and changing angles and so forth. But if you want to see a really vicious looking fight, look up Darker Than Amber fight scene on YouTube. It's like, oh my God, these guys are killing each other. It's fun. It's very entertaining. But it's not martial arts. It's fighting, but it's not martial arts. It's interesting to know the difference between those things, to see all the different things that can be gained from this discipline, all the different cultural approaches. I mean, I've studied martial arts from Europe, Italy and Spain, yeah, and a little bit of Africa, in Japan and Korea, and the Philippines and Indonesia, and homegrown, martial arts stuff that started with the Asian martial arts, but then was modified to fit the psychology, environmental needs, and rhythm patterns of Black Americans. It's infinitely malleable and just so fascinating to me, really. The aspect, I think that most science fiction writers find some aspect of the sciences to focus on, and mine was human mental and physical development. I've been fascinated by it my whole life. Just, and martial arts have been a linchpin. Martial arts and yoga together, they'll be the last things that I do in life, just physically. I'll cut away all the other stuff, but yoga and martial arts are going to last. I'll be doing that stuff till I'm dead. So, who else has a question for me? Anything you want to know? Please unmute, ask in chats. Because otherwise, we could switch the conversation to writing, working in Hollywood, all sorts of interesting stuff.
While people are getting questions together and thinking about what to ask, where did you start with martial arts? I mean, you've been doing this for a long time, but you had to start somewhere.
Well, I started, by not wanting to be bullied. When I was in grade school, I was already interested in it, and I used to draw cartoons about a kid with a YMCA cap who'd do judo on people, watching Mr. Moto movies, Danger Island, and, stuff like that, and watching little people throwing big people around, and said, I want that. But the first martial arts book I ever got might have been called Instant Self-Defense by a guy named Bruce Tegner, who was the first American to write lots of martial arts books. And he had he was a California judo champion, but he had a sketchy knowledge of a bunch of other martial arts, and would write books about stuff that he didn't really even know about. It was funny. He did one on fencing. And I had a chance to talk to the guy who was the former fencing coach for Cuba. And he took a look at Tegner's book and said, quote unquote, what is it? This man's work is, God, what is it? I can't remember the exact quote, but what it boiled down to, the total fraud against humanity. And in Cuba, he would be shot, is what he said, which cracked me up. But the first martial art I ever had a lesson in was CoKoCon when I was in high school. I did some wrestling in junior college. And then between junior college and the time that I went to Pepperdine University, I studied Taekwondo and Hapkido. And then in college, I studied more Taekwondo. I got a guy who was a Vietnamese guy to start a karate club. And then after that, I went to Kempo Karate, the Black Karate Federation, and spent years there. And then after that, I went to study with Danny Inosanto in the late 70s. Kickboxing, knife fighting, stick fighting, Filipino martial arts. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful art. And arguably my favorite. It's quite possible that of all the arts I've studied, the Filipino arts are closest to my heart, even though I don't have the highest rank in them. My highest rank would be in that variation of Kempo Karate that was created for in the inner city in Los Angeles. But it's been a struggle. I'm telling you, I had a lot of fear issues. It took me 17 years to earn my first black belt because I was dealing with so much fear from having been bullied and not having had a father in my home. And I, went to therapy and had coaches and did biofeedback and this and this and this and this. And it was just deep, deep in my body and in my psyche. And it gave me hell for a very long time. But if I asked myself at times, why can't I just quit this stuff? I knew that the answer was because if I do, I'll never know who I am. I'll never understand myself. I'll always be letting the bullies and the people who hurt me win. And I kind of refused to do that. It's like, no, I'm going to own my life. No matter what, I'm going to own my life. It would have been so easy for me to crawl up inside my intellect and just live in my head. It was so tempting. But if I'd done that, I think I'd be a lesser man, quite frankly. I can't speak for anybody else and the paths that they take, but I had to do this. I didn't really have a choice in that sense. Not if I wanted to be whole. I would have been letting the bullies and the racists win because it was fear that drove me, and it was fear that was stopping me. And I needed to get to the point where the fear wasn't a factor anymore. The factor was, there are two different ways to motivate yourself. One is moving away from pain, and the other one is moving toward pleasure. And motivating yourself by moving away from pain is ineffective. It's the same reason that diets don't work. People start a diet because they're afraid of what the doctor said to them. And so they maintain that discipline in order to escape their pain. If I lose this amount of weight, then I won't hurt anymore. I won't be afraid anymore. The trouble is that as soon as you've lost that weight, your motivation goes away. Therefore, the old habits come right back. And now you've got a yo-yo. And that yo-yo will continue. And every time you do, you lose a little bit of confidence in yourself. Same thing is true with making money or paying bills or meditating and dealing with your emotions so that you can have a healthy relationship. I would look at those three things as being the primary things that human beings have to deal with, relationships, career, and dealing with their physical bodies. Your wounds will always show up in one of those three arenas, as far as I'm concerned. So I wanted desperately to be whole. And the martial arts were the best path that I could see because they were both directly palliative for the bullying, and they represented a vision of myself that I had a hard time believing in. Who am I if I am not my fear? Who am I if I am not controlled by my past? What would I have been had I not had those experiences? Painful, important questions. And I refused to walk away from them. Any more questions?
Yes, Steve. Of all the martial arts you studied, which one do you think has taught you the most about using weapons? And
Filipino calling, no question. No question whatsoever. The Filipino martial arts. They're weapon-based. You start using weapons before you use empty hands.
And what weapons?
Oh, knife and stick.
Knives and sticks, okay.
Yeah. They teach you that you can pick up anything and use it as a weapon. Just the room is filled with weapons. Not just not just my office, but but everything around me, every knife, every stick, every pencil, everything is a weapon. The Filipino arts are beautiful arts. They're not as sophisticated. They don't specialize in the empty hands. They don't specialize in grappling techniques. And there are arts that are better in those things. But at the overall 360-degree revolving sphere of combatives, I don't know anything better. Questions? Tumbleweeds blowing through the town. We got 11 participants in there. There got to be at least 5 of them that never ask me a single question. They hate me.
A number of people who have spoken up have studied martial arts in some form for some length of time. What about somebody that never has? What would you recommend as a good place to start?
Well, it would depend upon their motivations. If you wanted to learn self-defense, I'd say don't study a martial art. Go to a self-defense workshop, one of those really high-intensity workshops that lasts for a weekend or a couple months, where the graduation exercise is you going all out in a guy in a padded suit. You're just learning how to go into controlled berserk. Other than that, study the martial art that makes your heart happy. You know, the exercise that is best for you is the one that you'll do. The martial art that you stay with, as long as it's a real art, as long as it's part of any kind of traditional lineage, it'll get you there. I mean, all that there is ultimately is 100% permission to defend yourself. If you would fight harder for the life of a child than you would for your own life, then society has brainwashed you. In getting back to the place inside you that is willing to fight for yourself is, critical. And everything after that is, a real fight is 2 cats in a sack. It's not, anything polite and nice. It's 2 people who are determined to survive. Somebody asked a question. You mentioned Hollywood. Have you worked in it? What did you think? Oh yeah, I've worked a lot in Hollywood. I mean, I've written a lot. I've written for Twilight Zone, Outer Limits, Stargate, SG-1, Andromeda. Recently for the new Twilight Zone with Jordan Peele, and I've got a couple of episodes of something called Horror Noir that AMC is doing in co-production with Shudder, and there are several television series and other stuff that we're trying to get going. But yeah, I've made more money in Hollywood than I have with my books, even though I've published, over 30 novels. I'm pretty sure that I've made more money in Hollywood. And Hollywood is this odd union between business and between art and commerce. It's one of the few places on the planet that an artist can earn a weekly paycheck. The science fiction writers of America get congratulated if they can raise $500 to send to a master in the field who's suffering a financial emergency, and well, they should. But the Writers Guild of America out here in Hollywood, they have retirement benefits. They have a health plan. They have some of the best health insurance in the world. I mean, they fight for you. They've actually got power. So it's a very different situation. It's the difficulty is working your way in, is finding the connections, is learning the language that is spoken in scripts and learning the language that is spoken in production companies. What is it they're looking for? These are smart people. They're very smart. But the executives are coming down from the top, down from the money people, whereas the creatives are coming up from writing stories. So what hopefully happens is they get close enough to be able to kind of shake hands. So the executives in Hollywood will take workshops from people like John Truby, Robert McKee, who are teaching story structure so that the executives can understand enough story structure that they can help the creators create. And it's, if you can collaborate, if you can think on your feet, if you've got good social skills, and if you live in Southern California, I would suggest anybody who's interested in writing try to get into Hollywood, because unless you're stuck on the novel form, because the potential rewards are just greater. If you can get in there, the difficulty is getting in there. But once you're there, if you've got above a certain level of skill, and there are a lot of novelists who have the skills to do it, but they don't understand how to get in there, you're going to earn more money per hour working in Hollywood than you will working, writing books, unless you are among the best of the best and the most successful of the most successful. For the average person who publishes a book earns Zippo compared to the average person who writes for television. Even though the average person who writes for television doesn't necessarily get more than a couple scripts a year, if that. There really is that much more money. Anybody else? I'm just going to sit here. Come on, guys. You know you want to ask me something.
Going back to switching over to your novels, how was your work with working with Niven and doing other collaborations?
Larry was my mentor. He is now my friend and semi-retired. It was a total blessing to be able, because he was not the first writer I had asked to help me, but he was the one who was willing to take a chance. God bless him, and I will always have nothing but the deepest respect and affection and appreciation for what he did for me. Larry Niven is one of the two most important men in my life, the other being my first karate instructor, Steve Muhammad. Working with Larry was a matter of wanting to listen, wanting to model, wanting to show off for him. Working with Larry and Jerry on the 4 projects that we did together was one of the greatest emotional pushes I'd ever made. Because Jerry's a natural teacher. He was also a contrarian and he loved confrontation. And so there was never a time I got together with Jerry where he did not try to push my buttons. I will not go into some of the subjects that he would push my buttons on, but let's say it was always an experience, and sometimes Larry left the room because Jerry and I would go at it hammer and tongs at times. And what did that do? It taught me, how do you argue with somebody who's smarter than you? Because Larry's smarter than me too, but Larry thinks sideways. It's not even fair. Jerry thinks more the way I do, except he had a rocket strapped to his skull. So keeping up with him and being able to interact with him on that level was a fantastic exercise. And writing with him was sometimes tough because, especially in the first book that we did together, I wanted it so much. I cared so much. I was trying so hard. And Jerry just took delight in ripping me a new one. I don't know how many people have ever had the experience of having 2 world-class writers on opposite sides of the room ripping their prose apart at the same time. Jerry would be laughing his ass off. We're murdering Barnes's precious prose. Barnes, was your mother scared by a gerund? I miss Jerry very much. Loved him dearly. Stephanie Dyer said, I just enjoy whatever topic you decide to talk about. You're always interesting. Well, thank you, sweetheart. I appreciate that. I always try to tell the truth. And I think that the truth is pretty interesting. And if there was anything I wanted from the martial arts, it was being secure enough to feel like I don't give a shit. I'll say what's true. Generally speaking, it's like, what you going to do? It's like, really, this is just who I am. I ain't got nothing else. We've got 5 minutes here. Let me tell you a little story that doesn't have anything to do specifically with martial arts, but it has, on another level, everything to do with martial arts. I was doing research for a novel called, what was that? Iron Shadows. That's what it was. Yeah, there it is. Iron Shadows. And actually, I've been doing research in general on spiritual sexuality, and I'd wanted to learn how to write love scenes in my books better. So one thing led to another, and I ended up studying with some people who were studying shamanic sexual practices for several years. And let's just say that some research is definitely more fun than others. And I ended up in a workshop, a 10-day workshop in the mountains in Georgia with a 29-year-old aerobics instructor from Grand Rapids, Michigan, whose husband had not been able to attend the workshop. We'll just put it like that. And it was really intense, and it was really good. And the lady and I, we'll call her Joni, got along very well. We were working very hard. We were both there with serious intent, but we were also obviously, having fun. Other people at the workshop were having emotional breakdowns. There was a lot of sexual dysfunction, a lot of breakdowns, a lot of fighting, but Joni and I were doing great. Then we started squabbling, and I wasn't sure why it was happening. We went to the guy who was the leader of the workshop, and he put us back together again, and for another day and a half, we were fine, and then the tension broke out again. I realize in retrospect why we were fighting. The cultures that have talked about sexual energy in a non-prurient way have said something to the effect that the intensity of an orgasm is in direct proportion to the amount of your ego that you release at climax. In other words, if you can remember your name, it wasn't good sex. So what I had done, what the workshop had done, was to create a Pavlovian stimulus response loop between the most powerful positive sensation your nervous system can handle and being authentic. The more authentic I was, the more powerful the sex got. And that was threatening to my ego. It was, your ego makes the mistake of thinking it's you, and it will kill you to keep you from killing it. So I went to the teacher, and he taught me an exercise called talking to the trees. And basically what you do is you go out and you find a tree in an area that is close to where people are, but not right where people are. And you talk to it. This is very California stuff. I understand that. So I did. And I went out and the trick is to watch and see when another human being walks past, how do you change? What's the difference between the way you are when it's just you and the tree and the way it is when another human being comes by? Because the difference is the price you pay for carrying your ego around. So I went out and I found a tree and I leaned my head against it and just cried my eyes out. And I said, I don't know how you do it. Whether it's cold or hot, rainy or sunny, you're still the same. I can't do that. How can you be so strong? And in that shamanic way that is probably more like peyote than psychology, although I was not on peyote, the tree answered me, and it said, I'm just a tree, man. My roots go down, my branches go up. This is all I am. This is all there is. And I got it. That ultimately in life, all you've got is who you are. That everything else is the stuff you carry around to keep people from mocking you or hurting you or disapproving of you. And the more you can own yourself, the more power you have as an individual, and the more you earn your way into the company of other people with similar power. Martial arts is a route to that. The arts are a route to that. Having a family, being a father or a spouse is a route to that. And that's what I would hope for from each and every one of you. You find your path that enables you to discover who you are in your time on your terms. Our time is up now. Thank you very much, guys. It's been a real pleasure. I hope that you're going to, enjoy the rest of the convention. And thank you for attending my workshop.
Yeah, thank you for presenting. This has been fascinating. Thank you, Stephen.
You're very welcome. Be well, everyone. Maybe I'll see you later. Bye-bye.
Bye. And I'll close down this room because it needs to be opened up for another one. So see you around the convention.